Good evening, everybody. Give us just a second. We're logging in, folks wrapping up work days. Good evening, good evening, good evening. Julie, if you want to come back on video, just to make sure that we can hear you. I want to start by welcoming everyone to the first ever Black Tech Beauty Bold Black Women Bold Conversations event. And my sister on the screen with beautiful makeup, beautiful lipstick, giving everybody grace, dignity, refined, gorgeous, wonderful, intelligent. I'm just going to affirm you in every way I can think of right now, Julie, because I know you work extremely hard on a daily basis. And just, I am elated to be doing this with you and to the wonderful women that have joined us. Before we start, I actually want to pop open the chat box and will encourage you all to pop open your chat boxes. I love starting any conversation with a gratitude activity. Simply because, especially I would say in 2020, if nothing else, hey Libra, you're not gonna say hi to me too? Hello, Libra. Hey Libra. But if for nothing else, I think 2020 has taught us all that in the midst of change, how you show up is the differentiator for many, many things. And I think more important than how you show up is if you can find the gratitude and the thing to be grateful for in whatever that moment or lesson might be. And so would ask everyone to just type something that you are grateful for in this moment, because I also know that it is significantly important now more than ever to be present where you're at, because literally life can change moment for moment. And if I didn't realize that before, 2019 into 2020 showed that to me. And so we'll ask our wonderful guests to let us know in the chat. Again, change it to all panelists and attendees for what you're grateful for. And Julie will actually ask you what you were grateful for in a moment.
Yeah, I am grateful for, I'm grateful for another day on earth. Mm-hmm. I'm just grateful to be breathing. I'm grateful for family and friends. Mm-hmm. But like, I think Gabrielle just said it perfectly, health and life. That's I mean, grateful for a job, all of those things, but health, life, and loved ones is the bare minimum, and I'm grateful for that.
And seeing a lot of great family and supporters, mentors, absolutely life. Yes, Janice, optimism, shelter, absolutely. The relationships, absolutely. So we'll encourage you all as you're thinking through, because I know sometimes it's like, wait, you want me to pause to be grateful? But literally, like, I think it's the most important thing that we can do for ourselves. Because look, there's a lot going in the world for Black women. You know about where I'm going to start after. You can guess where I'm about to start. And it's funny because I had no idea when we were doing our prep call for this conversation that we would be looking at being on the cusp of having our first ever Black woman as the Vice President of the United States. So I think it's all pretty serendipitous that you're our first guest for Bold Black Women, Bold Conversations moment, because you also had the blessing and fortune of working for the first Black President of the United States of America, the Barack Hussein Obama, as well as his esteemed and lovely, lovely wife, Michelle Obama. And so just sitting in that moment that we're in right now, how are you feeling today coming off of Joe Biden announcing that he was?
I'm feeling really good. You know, I have a lot of friends from the Obama administration who were on multiple campaigns, right? And everyone has rallied around behind Joe Biden. I think the time is now. And then to select Kamala as his vice presidential candidate pick was just, I was over the moon, you know? And look, I know a lot of people are like, well, should have went with Elizabeth Warren, should have went with Barbara Warren. Like everyone's gonna have their things to say. And they're like, Kamala's not about Black people or whatever the case may be. My question for those people are like, pick your so-called poison if you think all choices are bad, right? Obviously, I don't feel that way. I think we're in a good space with both of them as our pick. I think we had such a strong, deep bench that from the Democratic Party that, and not to like marginalize or diminish Kamala, but like anyone at all, we had such amazing candidates. I'm glad she was the pick. Selfishly, she's my soror, ski-wee. So I mean, like, you know, the AKAs are lit, you know, like everybody should be lit, whether you a divine nine or not. So so I'm super excited. I'm really hoping that I actually, Suzette, I'm more concerned with the disenfranchisement of voting rights. That is my main concern right now. That is some of the work I'm doing independently and with other organizations to make sure that people who have felonies, who need to pay restitution in order to vote, can vote, to make sure that people with disabilities can get to the polls with no issue, to think through this mail-in ballot piece. What is that gonna look like? You know, what strategy should we be giving to marginalized communities? Like where to put your vote? Go to that rich neighborhood and whatever place you're in, because you know those votes will be picked up. So that's where a lot of my focus is right now in this process. But I'm super excited. How amazing to have a Black woman. I'm sure, you know, all of our ancestors who have laid the groundwork, and some of them who've paid with their lives. Yeah. Gosh, they just must be dancing in heaven. So I feel incredibly honored to even come on the day after that to talk about this. So.
Absolutely. I was just thinking about, I actually was a founding member of the National Council of Negro Women at the University of Florida, so University of Florida Collegiate Section.
Wait, is that this one or is that this one? Y'all have all kinds of things in Florida. It's like Gators and this one.
Always that one, go Gators.
Sorry, I don't know.
Hey, we could.
I'm from Texas. I don't know.
Talk about the University of Florida. Say one thing about the University of Florida. But more important than where I went to school, like just knowing in my junior and senior year, we actually got to come to Washington and spend a weekend with Height. And Dorothy Irene Height was still at like 100 years old, like sitting in meetings all day with the collegiate sections. Yes, Libra. She sat in meetings all day with us. And I was just like, Lord, if you let me live to be 100 years old, please fire that she had and her commitment to ensuring that just the direction of the organization, because we were going to think about the convention. But just never let me lose the ability to be of sound mind and body to still be moving at 100 years old. Right. Right. So I just think about the folks like Dr. Height who like gave her all until the very end. Yeah. So
and to be at the feet of those people and listen and just learn and understand like what they encountered, like what a blessing, you know?
And an absolute reminder to us all too, like Black women stand in the gap for everyone. Cape and stand in support and in protection of the Harris family as well, because this is going to be a journey for all of them. And so just being mindful of, you know, I think about, you know, who will revere the Black woman, Abby Lincoln, in these moments. And I'm asking our community to revere the Black woman and stand up and hold her family up. And also keeping just all Black women in protection, because I think like people use opportunities like this to take a full onslaught against everything that is Black and woman and our entire being essence. So praying in particular for her, but for all of us, because I think we're all going to come into a space where we're having to stand up and speak loudly for Black women across the board.
That's right. That's right.
But today is not about future Vice President Harris, because I believe in manifestation.
Ain't it though? I mean,
I speaketh. Let's say Harris. We don't know about Joe past one term. Joe is also, we're going on 78 years old, and so it would be wonderful.
I love Joe so much. He was such a nice, like meeting him when working in the White House, and even afterwards when he came to the Bay Area. I remember we had a conversation in the back. I was like, I miss working for Mrs. Obama and your wife on military family initiatives. He was like, well, you gonna come back? I was like, well, you gonna pay these Sallie Mae loans off? And he looked at me, and I looked at him, and he looked at me, and I looked at him. I'm just playing. I mean, no, but that really happened. But I was like, for real though, because these loans are something serious.
I don't want to talk about the other person that's in office, and I don't even know if what he did this weekend in terms of passing executive orders will stick. The one that said no student loans through the end of 2020, I was like, why don't you just forgive them? Everything that's a federal loan, just forget it ever existed. Because the way life is set up, I'm sure there are plenty of people that would agree it would be nice to have those things just canceled out.
That's exactly right.
But I want to focus on you. Because today is about amplifying your voice. I had, just for quick context about how Julie and I met, she met me probably at one of the lowest moments in my life where I had to push through and pretend like everything was okay. So I had just gone to a conference in Jamaica, Tech Beach, which is an amazing conference. When conferences open back up, because the world is once again open, I do highly recommend Tech Beach as a place for networking, for really getting an understanding of what's happening in the broader tech ecosystem, but more importantly, for connecting with amazing people like Julie. And so I had just given this talk we'd sponsored, landed in Jamaica, my father had died. So I got off a plane, and for an hour after landing, I found out he had passed away in surgery. But I still had to, what Black women do, we roll up our sleeves and we keep going. Mm-hmm. And you cry in the back, and you cry at the room at night. You might eat popcorn until 4 o'clock in the morning, whatever it is you need to do to make it through as you are grieving, you do it. And I'd done this welcome during this executive leadership dinner that we'd sponsored. And Julie came up to me afterward, and she's like, I just want you to know I know what you're going through, because I've also experienced losing my father while I'm on the road. At the time she was on the road with Michelle Obama, and having to power through. And so when she did that and gave me that moment, I was like, oh Lord, who is this woman, and how do I keep her forever? Because one, just having someone that could empathize, but someone that knew I don't know what you need, but I'm here, that didn't know you in that moment, was phenomenal. And so when I was creating this, I was like, who do I want to? Julie, duh. I didn't have to think about it, because I think you are one leading such phenomenal and unique work. But you are an amazing woman. And so when I affirm you, it is not with flake platitudes. I actually think you're a phenomenal woman for more than one reason. So talk to us a little bit about your journey to tech, right? Because the other thing you and I talked about it is the folks that we know in tech are all non-traditional techies. So neither of us went to college being like, and God, I'm going to work for a big tech company. So talk about your tech journey.
Yeah, no, so it's been, it was not purposeful. It was not with some intent to go into tech. I didn't grow up I'm going to go into tech. I grew up and was I'm going to be a sports and entertainment agent, music. I wanted to be in entertainment. But I always knew that I would do immigration work for free. Being the child of immigrants, watching that experience, watching the legal system and how it treats immigrants, I knew that I wanted to be a lawyer. I knew I wanted to derive income from sports entertainment advocating, but I knew I wanted to give free services around immigration support. So, you have the early examples of Matlock, Maxine Shaw, Claire Huxtable, Because you can't be what you don't see. So this is what you see on TV. And I'm like, I'm going to be Matlock. I want to do that. I want to stand up for people.
Because you are of African descent. I'm of Jamaican descent.
Mm-hmm.
Very few careers that our parents.
Child. Let me walk you down that. So when I told my mom that, when I was sitting on her bed the summer before college, like I'm going, I was running track. I was like excited. I was like, I'm going to be a sports agent. I'm going to study business. It's going to be great. She was like, Julie, we struggle. Please be a pharmacist. Be a pharmacist. And she was right. We struggled. So I was like, sure, no problem. Became a biochemistry major. I'm a mathematician by heart. So like organic physics, that wasn't too crazy for me. Biology was another thing. I was like, what? The mitochondria? What? Like, where are the numbers? So I was a biochem major essentially 3 years. And Hurricane Katrina and Rita happened. And I was without a place to stay. I was in Southeast Texas in Beaumont, in the Beaumont, Port Arthur, Orange area at Lamar University. And we were displaced for a couple months. And when I came back, I didn't have a place to live for a semester. Mm-hmm. So I was forced between going home and dropping out of school for a little bit or staying on my line sister's couch. And they let me stay on their couch for a semester. Shout out to Amanda and Lindsay and Dakota across the hall who gave me a drawer in his dresser so I could put my clothes in. My grades plummeted that year, surprise, surprise. But it was in that moment that I decided I need to go to law school. So went to law school, pursued the legal career. When I got to law school, I knew I wanted to work in government to help people. So I was blessed with an opportunity to work for NASA all through law school as a legal fellow, working on the STS-129 ground and flight experiments that I was counseling like a biochem team, so full circle, came back. And then my teacher said, hey, my teacher in the graduate program in the MPA school said, you should try to work at the White House. And I was like, people can work at the White House as an intern? Like, I didn't know it existed. Again, exposure. If you don't meet people, they don't tell you things you don't know. So he told me about that. I applied. The reason why I want to share this, Suzette, I applied to the internship. They called me. I had a BlackBerry. Remember, you used to have the Blackberries, the Blackberries where you would scroll it like this. So I had the old school BlackBerry. I missed the call. I called back a week later. I was on 59 South in Houston. I was like, I am so sorry. I missed the call. The woman was like, mm-hmm. She was like, well, we interviewed other people. And I was like, well, thank you for considering me. I'm just honored to be considered. And she said, and we hired you. So if you clear Secret Service, we'll see you in a month and a half. And I almost ran into the shoulder of the freeway. And I'm just sharing that to say, like, there was no journey for me to go into tech, right? You do the best you can in the space you're in, and God opens the way. I didn't get that internship at White House. Camilla and Hannah, who hired me in Mrs. Obama's house, she saw something she never talked to me. It was nothing but God, and everything that came after that was God. So I was in government for nearly a decade. We got kicked out by the orange guy or whatever, the new guy, soon to be the old guy. And my last day at the White House was January 19th. I was exhausted. I gave the Obamas everything I had because I didn't know if I'd ever see a Black person occupy that seat again in my lifetime. So, when I used to run track, coach would say, leave it on the track. I left it on the track. I didn't look for a job. Even I had gotten job offers from old manufacturing clients. And I was like, I'm not interested. I'm tired. I'm exhausted. I asked God for 6 months to heal, to think, to grieve. I lost my father. Me and you had talked about this, to just even grieve that loss, right? And Airbnb, the GC reached out to me a couple months later. He was like, I got your resume. I was like, I'll talk to you, but I'm like not really interested in a job. It was no offense to Airbnb. I just was tired. We talked and I liked him. We met. Anyways, long story short, 6 months to the date from when I asked God, give me 6 months, on Juneteenth, I started at Airbnb. So that was my journey to tech. It wasn't planned. I didn't say I'm going to be a computer science major. I just said I want to help people. I wanted to go into government, and government somehow led me to tech.
Right. But isn't like that? That's the beauty of the journey, right? Like I would say like just trusting the process and having faith, right?
Yeah.
And like knowing that every single experience that you need to have, you're meant to have in order to order your steps to where you're going to go, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, it's often those moments where it's like, you know, there are probably other opportunities that you really wanted that you're like, damn, like, man, I really wanted to do that. But that one choice, right, or that one opportunity wouldn't have had your path lead you to working for like a phenomenal administration, to be clear, the Obama administration, but then like leading you to be doing really significant and important work within the tech space. Would you mind just giving us like a quick overview? Because I know folks see titles and we are more than our titles. And I say that in every occasion, right? A title is definitive only for what you hired you for. It does not you are at all, but like some of kind of the bigger picture things that you can share that you're responsible for and do.
Yeah, so at Airbnb, I'm community counsel and regional counsel for Africa. So I wear 3 hats. In my first hat, I serve as the North America lawyer for our community support team. So counseling any community standards, products, the tools that they're building out that will impact and affect our community. Then I wear a hat as our regional counsel for Africa and counseling that team, that dope, amazing team based in Cape Town. And as the company is thinking through how do we engage in the continent in a strategic way, counseling that team. So being like a Jane of all trades in that space. And then the last role is I'm our global civil liberties, civil rights lawyer. So anything proactively, reactively, I counsel our anti-discrimination product team. And they are a team that punches well above their weight, and they are just also phenomenal. I just feel very fortunate to work with good people across the board. So they're building out products and interventions to reduce bias that happens on Airbnb that can, and then I then counsel the reactive teams that deal with when something has now come up in the news, something has gone viral, we've now seen it, like how are we like handling that in real time? I counsel that on the legal side. So that's my job at a big picture at a high level.
Gotcha. So side note, we need to talk about Cape Town because South Africa is like my spiritual home. And at some point we'll live or have in South Africa. The way the world is set up, I don't know when anymore.
That part.
We'll exchange faves for continent visits. But I think I want to zoom in, Julie, to the work that you're doing around discrimination. And justice coach, because I want to focus on thinking about like product inclusion, right? And so, and the thing I talk about, right, as like a diversity, equity, and inclusion practitioner within the tech space, which is the work I do for anybody. Like, well, who's Suezette? Hi, Suezette.
Boss, amazing, talented, incredible, fierce. I'm going to give you affirmations, sis.
Me, sis. Thank you. But the thing that I always try, because what I will say is tech is a nuanced space in that it started in a bubble in some regard, right? And so you had friends starting ideas and companies and visions, right? Like I decide I think we need to be able to search information and gather it for the world. And I then create Google, not the internet, because I feel like people do think Google is the internet. Google is a tool. It is not the internet. Al Gore created the internet.
Yeah, I actually tweeted that the other day.
You know, with a whole bunch of other people. But the long story short of it is I extend grace to some extent to tech, right? Just simply because we have to remember that these companies were started with a very monolith group of people, right?
Yeah.
And so that then meant, and let's be clear about it, these companies were able to become multi-million-dollar companies and organizations without having to take in consideration what it meant to diversify their base, be it their base, their consumer base. Think of a base. Product inclusion, I would say, is literally like a new phenomenon for tech, because at some point, one, besides releasing diversity ports, they realized that they were missing a significant consumer dollar, which is the Black consumer dollar, right?
That's right.
And so as you are thinking about like being a leader in this space, thinking about discrimination, right? How do we as a community, and then thinking about product inclusion, right? But how do we as a company or as well, Black people should function as like a company or corporation so that we drive the action and change we want. That's a whole different thing. But how do we hold companies accountable for building products with the Black community in mind, right? And what is at stake when they do not?
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. And you like hit the nail on the head. A lot of these companies have derived their wealth off of marginalized communities and people who are many times left at the margins without having to think about them in building the thing, right? So that's just so spot on. I think one thing that's incredibly critical, you know, there are many organizations that exist in the world, whether it's an NAACP, whether Equity for Justice, whether it's a color of change, that are holding companies, responsible. LULAC, there are many organizations that exist in the world that are holding companies accountable. I think when I look at the responsibility of, and I'm going to take it back, I look at the responsibility of Black lawyers. I think we are responsible for paying attention to the legal landscape that is being shaped and to be participating in that process intentionally, in the cases we appeal and the things that we petition before the Supreme Court and the regulations that are being created at a state, local, and federal level. I think that is the responsibility that I think the law plays such an intricate role in that, right? And then the people, right, play a role in making sure they put people in position who are going to, in fact, uphold and create with their constituents in mind as we're as tech is moving. I always say tech is a moving train, like it's moving 100 miles a minute. There's nothing you can do to stop it. It's here. This country once went through an industrial revolution. We're past that. We are in a technology evolution, revolution, whatever you want to call it. This is here and this is now. The train is moving. We have to pick our seats as Black people. That's it. We have to get, we're on board, pick a seat, pick the one that you want, right? And be intentional in creating that process. I think one of the things that I've seen at Airbnb is that it's no secret that we have had challenges with the way that people have interacted in the community. Now, there's not a lot we can do to solve for that because people show up and then people, you know what I'm saying? Like some people can just be awful. Some people, can just be prejudiced. And it's our responsibility to make sure we enforce against those people. But as we're building tools at Airbnb, some of the things we've done to mitigate bias was creating an instant book feature. So you instantly can book with me now. It's not me seeing your face. If my place is open, it's open. And if I then decline you for some reason or cancel your reservation, I need to explain why. It can't be for discriminatory purposes, right? So that was one step that we did in 2018. The year before, in 2017, we told our whole community to agree to a pledge that says, I agree to treat people fairly with respect, without judgment, without prejudice and bias, regardless of their race, age, color, whatever. 1.3 million people declined that, and we removed them from Airbnb.com. And we were like, we're just not interested in you being part of our community if you won't uphold this value. This is part of our mission and who we are. And then more recently, the anti-discrimination product team that I mentioned to you, they created, and I had the honor to counsel them on Project Lighthouse, which was launched in partnership with Color of Change, which is a method that we're now using to study and measure and see what is happening on our platform with our user community to see, is there a gap between Black and white users and how far is the gap, if so, and what product interventions can we put in place to reduce it? So I think from a company perspective, companies need to be incredibly thoughtful about the build, making sure they're bringing people to the table, looking around the table and saying, who's missing? I'm a Black woman, right? I'm a Black dark-skinned woman. So there's 3 protected classes: race, gender, and color, because we forget the color is a protected class. At least in the United States, it certainly is. So am I missing someone with disabilities? Am I missing a colorblind person? Who else am I missing that's not at this table as we're building this thing? To pivot back, as the Black community, I think we need to be holding companies, we need to be holding state and local government responsible for keeping our interests in mind as technology is permeating even throughout government. As I was leaving government, that was something I was seeing a ton with different big tech companies getting big government contracts. They're already in government. So tech is everywhere.
Tech is absolutely everywhere, but I think what is significant about the moment in time we're in now is like these conversations that we know we've needed to have for years. Yeah. Unfortunately, George Floyd had to lose his life, and Breonna Taylor, and to all of our trans sisters that have lost their lives in the time period. We had to have a significant moment in time in American history, which was a global history with the pandemic, but then the death of innocent people for the world to hit pause and for us to have to like sit in it and address it, right? So I feel like, y'all don't judge me, I feel a little bad saying this, right? Because a loss of life is never good, right? But the number of catastrophes that had to happen in order for us to actually take notice, right? Because I think more so now than ever is an opportunity to hold people accountable and for us to say, what are you actually doing? And if they're not doing something,
what can you?
What can you do? And when are you going to do it by, right? Because what I will say is y'all have gotten quiet on LinkedIn. I don't see people talking about race no more on LinkedIn. Y'all was very hype.
As if it was just a moment. As if it hasn't been 401 years. Yeah.
And I think that if you had any other opportunity to be loud and hold people accountable, do it now. Because there's a spotlight on folks.
Yeah.
And so we should be holding them accountable to it. I don't have the opportunity, Julie, to talk more also about how you've managed to take your passion for community work and tie it not only to tech, but back to something that I think that is really just core to who we are as a community, which is hip hop. And another reason I fell in love with Julie in Jamaica, y'all thought I went to Jamaica and found Winston. I found Julie. My Julie Winston is the album and the mixtape. So talk to us a little bit about how you are also like leveraging your position in tech to build a movement and momentum around using hip hop to heal.
Yeah, no, thank you for the opportunity to speak about it. So the album and the mixtape is a company I started 3 years ago on Tupac's birthday, and launched it right here in Houston, Texas, with a lot of people who were like OGs in Houston hip hop, Ghetto Boys, Willie D, DJ Superstar, just having women and men in hip hop to launch it here. People who work in the health field, Dr. Chantel Parker, who's a pharmacist, who was there when Katrina happened and was in the middle of everything in New Orleans, trying to get people medicine, you know? So I wanted to merge the impact of storytelling, music, lyricism with healthcare and mental health and our wellness and our healing. And I launched in Houston, and the album and the mixtape is essentially a collective of creators, storytellers, writers, filmmakers. It's a group of people who are committed to storytelling through bars and using music and lyrics and prose as a means to create healing. So I've been very fortunate that Airbnb has been supportive. A couple years ago, or when I first started Airbnb, Hurricane Harvey happened in Houston. It was the first hurricane where I wasn't home. I'm used to being in hurricanes, you with people, y'all are in the water together. It's different when you're here. But I was in San Francisco with beautiful sunny skies, and you know, it was September in San Francisco. It was beautiful. And I had like my friend calling me like, I'm outside at a payphone because my battery is on 12%, you know, and so I'm saying all that to say, I ended up having a concert at South by Southwest to raise money for people in Port Arthur who were still struggling after the storm. Did that with the support of Trey the Truth, Bun B, Slim Thug, Crystal Wall, just all these amazing people, Willie D, all these amazing Houston hip hop artists and pioneers who have been incredibly helpful in surfacing these types of stories and advocating for these kind of communities. So it's been a blessing to be able to, for my job to say, well, let's support and figure out how we get behind this. Let's make it an Airbnb experience and raise money and do whatever. So it's been beautiful to be able to merge it, what I call your album and your mixtape, right? To me, your album is your day job. It's the thing that you do to pay your bills. It's the thing that you do. It's your contractual obligation to a label. Your mixtape is the thing that God has put on your heart, the thing that you would give for free. And you don't have to make money from it. So for me, the album and the mixtape and that movement is my mixtape. It's the thing that I'm using to heal community and maybe heal me too in the process.
I love that. And the thing I want to honor in that is, I think, the fact that you found a way to leverage your position, right? Like acknowledging that being in tech, being a Black woman in tech, being cisgender heterosexual Black woman in tech comes with its own like immense weight and burden, but also an extreme privilege. And to create an opportunity within sitting in that privilege to reconnect back to your communities, right? Like, to whom much is given, much is expected. But like, it's how do we reconnect our communities to the tech space, right? Because we can also acknowledge that with tech being the next industrial revolution, tech will also be, and it already is, a significant source of wealth.
That's right.
And is the differentiator between us being able to create generational wealth for our communities and our families, and for creating new opportunity for just what we know is like economic freedom. And so the fact that you're like, how do I connect this entity that is based in San Francisco back to my community in Texas is not only significant, but I applaud you for that. Because for me, it's what doors do you open for folks that are not in your clique and your crew?
Mm-hmm.
And not saying anything wrong with having a clique and a crew, but at almost 40 years old, I'm also clear that we don't create access and opportunity by only lifting the voices and leveraging our resources for the folks that we know. It's for opening doors for broader community.
And Suezette, if I could just add to that, because we weren't always in a clique, right? Somebody had to help us. We didn't always know. Oftentimes I think people think, there are so many privileges. Everyone who's on this call right now has the privilege of having internet access. There may be a lot that we're marginalized from, but enlightenment and knowledge is like the greatest privilege ever. So when you can bring that and you can transfer, we talk about tech transfer, when you can transfer knowledge to communities, that's different. So I think about like where I grew up, I think about some of my best girlfriends who've never been on a plane. You know what I'm saying? Like my close girlfriends that have never been on a plane. These are my riders, like 20 years. Like it's important to me to make sure that I'm providing access. Like we have a responsibility, so so I just wanted to share that piece about the privilege of enlightenment and knowledge and being able to share that with people who may have not been exposed to it just yet. And not because they're not capable and not willing, but they don't know.
Absolutely. We all know I could talk to you all day.
Me too. I could talk to you too.
In that same day. But want to make sure that I open up the floor. And so if there are questions that you have for Julie, you can either type them into the chat or into the Q&A, because I do want to make sure that folks have some time and space to also connect with Julie. Virtual, of course, has changed how we connect. And so I know it can be a little wonky, but please, if you have questions, feel free to ask them in the Q&A or the chat. Otherwise, I will continue talking to Julie because I'm enjoying it. And would love to create that space for y'all. And Julie, how do folks learn more or follow the album and the mixtape?
Yeah, absolutely. You can find us on Facebook, like facebook.com/album and mixtape. Twitter is album and mixtape. And then on Instagram is album mixtape. And also the website is albummixtape.com. And if you just, there'll be a little pop-up, you can just sign up and we'll send you stuff and keep you posted on the things that we're doing. We won't spam, we don't spam, just so you know. You might get one email a month, maybe. We try not to spam.
I want that one email, so I'll make sure. Okay, so we do have so far 2 questions, so thank you. And the first question is, how has the Airbnb industry changed since the pandemic? Really
good question. It has, I think, travel, just the world of travel has changed. It really interrupted our industry. It really interrupted our work. For me, I think there were some people during the pandemic that had nothing to do. I had so much to do because, again, one of my hats is I'm the North America customer support, community support lawyer. So that means anything going wrong in the community. So working around the clock. I mean, I think for our industry, it's allowed us, we unfortunately went through a layoff in May. We even reduced lines of business, and our leadership determined that that was the best way to move forward. Like, let's get back to the basics. Let's focus on how we built this company. Let's be more leaner in terms of our approach and more narrowed in our focus. We now understand that people aren't traveling all around the world, but they're like traveling from, Texas to, Houston to Austin and San Francisco to Tahoe and it's all this local travel. So how do we make sure that we are double down and empowering those communities as well? So it has certainly been an interrupter. I think it has allowed our business to become more narrowly focused, and we've had some new leadership come into the organization as well. For me, even on my client side, I've seen that, and I think that's been great. Obviously, like, I'm incredibly devastated of the nearly 2,000 people that we lost. It was really hard, and I feel like I have no right to say that because I kept my job. So I even feel bad saying that, but like seeing my friends lose their job was really, really hard. Yeah, so that's my answer to that. Sorry to end on a somber note.
Hey, you're a human, you're a person, and you care and you're people-centric, so that answer makes sense. Our next question, thank you, Scarlett, is Julie, how was your training going into your current position? So what did onboarding look like? What was your experience of going in?
My training going into the job, or like when I was on the job?
Going into, so maybe onboarding and even on the job, if you've had any like growth and development support would be great.
Yeah, so crazy thing is, and I think I can say this, my boss was the only litigation lawyer in North America. So, and then I came and then it was two of us. So that's what it looked like. He was swimming and I was like, how have you been doing this all by yourself? He was just like, I'm just making it through. I think the onboarding process, I really enjoyed it. There's a video they play your first day about just how the company started, and you learn that it started literally with airbeds. Like, there were 3 airbeds. There was like a conference happening, and it was a design conference, and our founders were like, what if we rent 3 airbeds and give people toast and jam in the morning, and it's an airbed and breakfast. So like, that's how it initially started, and they wanted to scale that. Actually, not what you see today. But it's so interesting because you can go into creating something. For anyone who has an entrepreneurship spirit, you can go in trying to create a thing and you're thinking, I'm going to create, a good friend of mine went into creating an app for music, and he ended up creating like a TV show because he was just creating the show so that people could use the app. But then the show took off and Apple TV was like, come on. So like, the thing that he intended to do, which was create the app, which is doing well, but the TV show ended up being even better and getting more clicks and views. So back to the question around training, it was a lot of it was on the go. I felt prepared because in government, I had just left leading President Obama's manufacturing program for the nation. So I was adept at dealing with private industry, academia, economic development organizations, and state and local government across the country, and not in like Los Angeles alone. Like, Los Angeles is one of my communities, not in just Seattle, but like in Dayton, Georgia, or in Alabama, in the rural parts of Alabama where we're doing shipbuilding. So I was adept at navigating in rural and urban industry. So I knew how to handle multiple things. And I had also been an in-house lawyer. I've never been at a law firm. And in a law firm, you get a lot of resources. When you're in-house, you don't. It's like you do the admin, you pick up the phone, then you pick up the phone like, Julie will be right with you. Then you're like, hi, it's Julie. So like you do all those things for yourself when you're in-house. So I'm just used to operating with very little and making it shake, So a lot of I will just say that the videos about the company really touched my heart. The mission around belonging and putting people first touched my heart. When the Charlottesville marches happened, like 2 months after I started, the company found people like through our systems. That was one of the things I got to work on. We found people who were going to the march. We removed them from the platform. And the company came out and made a public statement like, we abhor this kind of behavior. This is not of us and we don't want it here. And I thought that was amazing because some people will say freedom of speech, you can be on here, let's make this money. But Airbnb took a stand. So my onboarding was great. I've had a beautiful experience. I've learned so much about myself. I've grown so much. And I think the one piece of advice I would give is, no matter what, no matter how a training experience or an onboarding experience is, like revel in each of those moments, the highs and the lows. Like there's something to learn and to glean out of all of it.
Thank you for that. Okay, so Gabrielle, thank you for your question. Given that Black Women's Equal Pay Day is tomorrow, how do you advocate for Black women being paid their worth in the spaces that you inhabit?
Yeah, demand it. Pretend you are a white man. This sounds really bad. Pretend you're a white man and demand it. And let me tell you, Gabrielle, I had the best example from my boss when I was looking for a place to stay in the Bay. My boss is a white man. And when I was new to the Bay trying to find a place to stay, I got on this listserv called YBSF, Young Black in San Francisco.
On that listserv.
They was cutting up earlier today. I was like, if y'all don't stop talking about Kamala. Anyways, so I got on that. I found my soon-to-be roommate. I went that night and met her when she sent the email. I loved her. I loved the place. And I was like, this is great. This could work. Like me and her had so much in common. And the next day my boss was like, how'd it go? And I was like, it was great. It was like a Friday. He was like, oh, well, so you're going to get it? I was like, well, I got to wait on her. He goes, why would you wait? Like, send her an email. I was like, isn't that stalker? She was like, no, but you want it, right? And I was like, yeah, I do, but I want to be deferential. No, if you want something, you just send an email. You go get the thing you want. And I emailed her, and the next day we were roommates. And in that little bit, like Bob showed me that it was not even, as Black women, we're so used to just negotiating space and being mindful about how we move in the world. And this is not to say anything about my boss, but it was second nature to him. Like, if you want something, you just ask for it. So Gabrielle, when you're dealing with, equity of pay, I think it's looking at the people in your looking at other positions at other companies, like where are they leveled for the work that you're doing? Using that as a comparison. I think it's forcing companies to do pay equity analysis, right? To really see, have they in fact marginalized different communities in pay? Because Gabrielle, you bring up such an important point. We typically get promoted on our base. So Gabrielle, if you come in as a Black woman at 75 cents and white man has $1 and he gets 20% on that, right? Your 20%, you'll never catch up to him ever. And that's generational wealth that is missed. So I think you demand it. I think you pretend you're a white man. I know that sounds bad. I think you expect, like, well, what are you talking about? I expect you to do this equity analysis. I expect to get paid that, and smile.
Listen, I'll to other questions because that is a topic in and of itself, but you also need to get somebody that knows how to negotiate. Because my current salary, 2 Black women that are attorneys negotiated for me. Half, but I took it to them and I was like, hey, this is what they're giving me. And they're like, nope, this. So also like
red line.
Yeah.
And the red line.
And negotiate because people are expecting you not to. Libra, Clemens, hello Libra. Julie, what can we do as Black folks to support the next generation of Blacks who are interested in tech? What are the unwritten rules that we need to share?
Yeah, I think that's such a really good question. Hi, Libra. I think, unwritten rules and what can we do to support? I think, one, there is this notion, and I see this happen a lot in politics, which I like hate politics. I hate politics. I know that sounds really weird. I just really like the Obamas. I just really don't like the game of politics, you know? But in politics, there's this notion of like, we are the old guard and you need to come kiss the ring before you can put on a program, before you can do a thing. You need to struggle the way we struggle. I don't want my 24-year-old mentees, you know, my 20-year-old mentees, I don't want them struggling the way I've struggled. That's not the experience I want from them. I want them to see all my scars, see all my battle wounds, get all the places I've bumped and had bruises on my head. I want them to learn so that they know to go under the table and not run straight into it the way that I did. So I think it's our responsibility to not get up here and have conversations about, well, my success, but to say, no, here's where I messed up. There's where I also messed up. And I also messed up when I said that. And I implore you to not do the same. Or I messed up when I let that woman talk to me the way she did. And she did it for a little too long. I should have checked her the first time with class, right? Because I love when Lauryn Hill says, I learned that it's important to be righteous and not right. You don't always have to be correct, right? But you should be righteous in your approach. It's not about the what, it's about the how you do it, right? Mm-hmm. So I think it's important to tell this next generation that's coming behind us of all the mistakes that we've made. I think we also need to be patient with them because they learn, they process, they manage differently than we do. So we need to understand that it's not like the way we experience things is not the way they've experienced things. They grew up with social media at a young age. We did not. That thing happened in college and post-college, right? For a lot of us that may be on or not.
College Club, was that social media? Anyway.
Facebook was out for. So, you know, like we need to be patient with the way that they process, they learn and they lead the way that they lead. You know, I got a chance to work with the kids from March for Our Lives in Houston, and I just love the way that they approach things, and I want to learn from them. But Libra, the way that we love on the younger generation, we need to do the same with our elderly, and we need to be at their feet, learning and hearing from them as well. I mean, Suezette just mentioned it earlier with Dorothy Height, and learning and being at her foot to understand the experiences that she's had as well. And then your second question, which was, what was that second question? It was a good one too.
Let me go back.
Unwritten rules. Yeah, the unwritten rules. So one thing that I will say, there is actually a YouTube show called The Unwritten Rules of like how to not, like everything I wish I would have learned in my 20s. I love that series. It's an amazing series by Ink Spot Media. So check that out. I think some of the unwritten rules, if I could think of one or two, would be hard work and putting your nose to the grindstone does not yield promotion, development, growth, visibility. I thought so, because that's what my mom told me growing up. She said, you're a Black woman, you have to work twice as hard. So all I know is work hard. So like, it's easy for me, like people's 100% is my 2015, because like, it's easy. That's all I know when that's drilled into you as a child, where other people from other communities may be learning, you got to play the game. You got to be smart. Make sure you know the person at the top, do this, do that. That's not how we're trained. So I think understanding those unwritten rules and navigating different professional and personal spaces and understanding that it's all about relationships, I think is critical as well. So I would definitely say there's no such thing as just working hard alone. I've seen people who don't work at all that ascend to the top, okay? So that would be one of my rules.
Sponsorship will get you a lot further than your outcomes in many cases and instances. So really quickly, I know we have a couple more questions for Julie. I wanted to honor that a part of this conversation is also creating space to honor folks either by brand or by profession that are in the beauty industry. And so for this month and for this conversation, actually really excited to give Lisa Jones, who is the founder and head artist for Jones for Beauty, an opportunity just to talk a little bit about her brand and what she does and how you get in touch with her. And then we'll wrap up with these final questions for Julie. So Lisa, if you give me 1 second to find you. I'm like, Lord, we went from a world of nobody knew what Zoom was to now if you don't know how to work Zoom, it does not work well. So Lisa, Give us a second. Make sure it's the right one. Lisa, will you ping the text box what your right name is? Because I'm seeing 2 Lisas and it's not letting me.
Oh, Lisa's on.
Lisa. Do we see her? Okay, let's do start video and unmute. Lisa, are you there?
She's here. She's there as Lisa Jones, one word.
Lisa Jones. All right. See y'all. Let's add Lisa. Give me 1 second. Julie, any other unwritten rules you give while I
think, let's see. I mean, this doesn't really relate to the workspace. I think one thing that I had to learn the hard way is really making sure that you're prioritizing yourself and your mental health. No one tells you about that. I've had so many friends who've had to take medical leave from their jobs from just overworking. So just really prioritizing self-care. And I'm not just saying it, like schedule the time. That's the one thing that has nothing to do with the job and ascending, but everything to do with you and your well-being.
Awesome. And Lisa, are you able to unmute? Let's see if we got her.
Yay! And she looking fierce.
Hold on, unmute.
Her curls are popping, earring is like on point, shoulders out. We see you, sis.
Look at the bottom left side. It should be a little mic. And the Zoom will not let me unmute you. In the interim, Lisa, while Lisa's figuring that out.
Okay.
Perfect.
What happened? It was just there. Oh, there it is.
We hear.
Okay. Can you hear me?
We honor you. Hello, Lisa.
Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I don't know what happened. I was clicking it.
No problem. You looked beautiful doing it.
Oh, thank you.
I'm in the presence of 2 amazing, beautiful, wonderful Black women.
Oh gosh, nice meeting you, Julie. Your story is like amazing.
Ooh, it's so good to meet you and just to know and hear all about you and all of the great work that you're doing. I can't wait for you to tell everybody else. I was like, yes, I get to share the stage with her.
Oh, thank you. And thank you, Suezette, for having me. I'm like, I don't know why you picked me, but you know, I'm here.
Some people are impetus for your greatness. And so for I've been following each other on IG since at least earlier this year, right? I've found that I've met some of my favorite people. So Janice Jamila, founder of I Don't Do Clubs, and I met on Twitter. So I will pick up a friend on social media. So anybody tells you anything different than I'm a kind, warm heart that just loves to connect with really intentional people and really intentional moments. But Lisa and I actually connected in real life at Keola George's event. And I was like, oh, I should include like actual people that do the work within the beauty space in Black Tech Beauty. Because Lisa was sharing that she was a makeup artist and the work she was doing and some of the experiences with the pandemic. And you should be the first person. You inspired it. So,
thank you.
You also just had like a great energy and light. I'm an energy, light, intuition type of girl. So you were meant to be here. So welcome, Lisa. So talk to us a little bit about Jones for Beauty. And the work you're doing and clientele and how people can get in touch with you.
Well, my last name is Jones. So when I was thinking of a name for my business, I was just kind of like, well, what am I going to name it? I didn't want to be like Lisa makeup or whatever, because I also do hair and I like fashion and fitness and all this stuff. So I just kind of wanted to do something that name my business, something that kind of encompassed all of those things. So, what I thought of, I was like, well, my last name is Jones. And when you have a Jones for something, it's like you have like a craving or a longing for it. So I was like, okay, well, I have a Jones for beauty, because I think like I said, fitness and health and wellness and all those things are like, to me, that's all what beauty is. So that's kind of where I got the name. As far as my background, I originally started in fashion many, many years ago. Graduated from FIT in like 96. And when I started, I kind of, instead of being a makeup, I was not one of those.
That, I honor the good Black don't crack one, girl. So I like 96. She graduated from FIT in 96. Okay, continue. So.
Oh gosh, yeah. I wasn't one that grew up doing makeup. I didn't start getting into makeup till I was like in my 20s. All my girlfriends used to, that was when MAC was like a thing, and it was like, oh, I have my old baby lip gloss and this, that, and the other. And I would sit there looking at them like clueless, because I wasn't one that grew up playing in their mother's makeup and things like that. So I didn't start getting into makeup until I always wanted to go to cosmetology school because I liked doing hair when I was in high school. I used to do my own hair, cut my own hair, and style my own hair. For some reason, I just always wanted to go to hair school. I always wanted to go to cosmetology school. So I said, okay, when I went, I was like, I liked doing the hair part, but I got into doing makeup and stuff as well. And that was the part of it that I gravitated towards more. After I finished cosmetology school, I met a young lady who worked in the industry doing hair and makeup on sets and things like that. And in the back of my mind, I kind of always want, like, if I got into that part of the industry, like I said, since my background was in fashion, I wanted to do the styling part of it. But then I got my hands on this book, and the book said, well, in order to get clothes and like things like that to style on set, you had to use your own money and, use your own credit cards and develop relationships with stores. And then you have to buy the clothes and return the clothes. And then you have to babysit the stuff on set and hope it doesn't get, I said, no. I was like, well, maybe if I just learn how to show up with a makeup kit. And, I said, I grew up drawing. I always liked to draw ever since I was little. So I said, well, drawing, doing makeup is just kind of drawing on somebody's face instead of drawing on paper. It's just a different canvas. So I started taking makeup classes. I've taken classes with Sam Fine and Danessa Myricks and Ricky Posley and, like all these different, greats in the makeup industry. And that's how, it's like I've just grown from there. But as far as my clientele, I do, like I said, I work on sets. I've worked on Jay-Z's videos and Kanye West and Common, and I've done all types of commercials, Oral-B, Oil of Olay, all different. But as far for me, it's like, I like bridal, surprisingly, because for me, and it's like, I don't want to call brides regular women, but they're not models, they're not actresses, so they're not used to the glitz and the glamour and the photos and the makeup and the hair and all that stuff like that. So to see a woman just go through that like Cinderella like metamorphosis like on her big day, it just like it does it for me. It's like to just see her go through that and her, to see her before and after, see the pictures and just her experience that moment with the bride is just, it warms my heart. Like that's just a beautiful thing. And for me, it's like I don't want to take away from anybody's aesthetic or for the way that they do things, but just as far as like the cakey Instagram, eyebrows and makeup and stuff like that, like that's just really not my aesthetic. I like women to look like women. I like skin to look like skin. If I do someone's makeup, I don't want their husband, boyfriend, fiance, like, what you doing with my wife? I want a woman to still look like her and feel like her when the makeup is on. So that's the way I wear my makeup. It's like, I don't cake it on. I don't like that. That's not my thing. So, that's that's just my story.
And it's all about, right, enhancing what's there, celebrating.
Yeah.
And I know that you're like, my favorite kind of woman is a woman that I can connect with, right? And it's like girl next door that just needs like a moment to feel like she is like luxurious, right? We need to know luxury in our lives. Really quickly, Lisa, because I'm also cognizant of time, how do folks find you or get in touch with you?
Like I said, my Instagram is Jones for Beauty. That's JONESFOR Beauty. My Instagram, that's my Instagram. My website is by the same name, jonesforbeauty.com. Email jonesforbeauty@gmail.com. So it's all the same.
Awesome. And I still have a slide, and Lisa's information was all linked in that email. So thank you so much, Lisa.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to put you back as an attendee.
Okay.
Thank you. All right, Julie. So I'm cognizant of time. I know that folks are hopping off and leaving as they need to. Julie, we do have a couple more questions. If you have time, I am happy to rock and roll through them. Also, since I know that you are still working with people in California time, my team knows about 5:30. Don't ask me for nothing till tomorrow. No, seriously. Like, I think the thing that I have, another unwritten rule in tech is if you don't create your own boundaries, your boundaries get created for you, and those boundaries tend not to exist. Do you have time for a couple more of these questions?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm looking at a few of them now too.
Okay, perfect. Helen's question. Thank you, Helen. Julie, can you please talk about any challenges you face addressing Black issues to a room full of non-Black people, assuming Airbnb's teams lack diversity?
Yeah, I think and hi, Helen. Helen went to Thurgood Marshall School of Law. She's a dope entertainment lawyer and has a beautiful son. I think, Helen, some of the challenges I face in trying to have conversations with people is trying to get them to understand why a specific thing may not land the way that they expect in certain communities. And it's just because they can't wrap their head around it. It's not, it's not for not wanting to understand. It's not something that even comes to mind for them. And that's the beauty of living in privilege. In even me as a privileged, able-bodied person that can walk into a front door and don't have to look for a ramp, right? Mm-hmm. So it is just thinking through, I've had to have some of those conversations. I think one conversation that I had to have with leadership about a year ago was this notion of like minority and underrepresented minorities and how in tech it's oftentimes lumped together. And I just think it minimizes the impact that the Black community, like what I'm facing as a Black woman, seeing people murdered on the nightly news is different than, my friend, my Latino friend who is dealing with families being ripped at the border, than my Asian friend from South Asia who's dealing with the marginalization of the issues that the broader Asian community has with presumption of whatever, right? Like this community is more represented in tech than maybe other communities in the Southeast Asian community. So that's one thing that I've had to share, like, let's stop lumping all of this together and let's really make sure we have specific goals for each group. So that's one thing that I think I've had to navigate in the workspace. And recently I've brought up color. I recently brought up color and was like, we don't talk about colorism and how we measure it. And we need to, so I don't know if I should have said that, but I've said it. And I feel that way about any company, to be quite frank. And I think it's something that people are having a hard time measuring. Like, what are the shades? Are there 4 shades? Are there 12 shades? But I do think, colorism is something that needs to be discussed, not only from a product perspective, but from a who do you advance in leadership perspective. There are studies that are done that show that, like in the Black community, lighter skinned women or women who have more European features advance quickly. That's insane. But there are studies that show that. So then how are we solving for that, right? Because that might be the next thing that we discuss, right? That might be the next civil right that we discuss.
Listen, I applaud you for having those conversations. I recently actually saw something and reposted it about how you can extend light skin privilege to our brothers and sisters outside of that, because we do have to have all of those conversations.
Right.
But also, I abhor, and I go to every meeting and be like, don't you call me no POC, just say Black. You have permission to just say Black, because like taking it and shortening and making it an acronym or abbreviation doesn't change the fact that like you then try to make us a monolith, and the experience
Right. It's harmful.
is not really shared, right? So at a minimum, just call me Black.
Right. Or African American, because some people really feel uncomfortable saying Black. So.
And that's like a segue to this question. I think a continuation of just like how you address what's happening at Airbnb. I want to ask Kev's question. So it's like, thank you, Kevin. Does Airbnb have employee resource and affinity groups? Do you feel those groups or events are helpful or safe spaces? Or does Airbnb need more diversity in senior roles so that Black people can bring their authentic selves to work? Kevin, you're clear on what you think.
Yeah. That part. Thank you, Kev.
They create. What's your response to that, Julie?
Yeah, no, thanks, Suzanne, and thanks, Kev. We do have employee resource groups. I was very fortunate and privileged to lead our global Black community about a year and a half ago. Gosh, I guess since 2018 to 2019, I led our global Black group, and as a co-lead, and felt very incredibly grateful to do that work and to have some really important conversations with executives, with leaders as a group, not just me, but as a group, and bringing everyone together so that they could hear our collective experiences, and not from a place of complaining, but from here is our lived reality so that you understand how we move in the world, right? So I do think those places are safe spaces. I've really enjoyed a lot of the experiences I've had with the Black Employee Resource Group at Airbnb. I enjoy even partnering with some of our other, like our Latinos, and Latina is called, or Latinx rather, is called Juntos. So partnering with Juntos, or partnering with Asians at, or Trans at, like all of the different groups that we have within Airbnb, veterans at. That has also been interesting too, discussing intersectionality. One of my good friends who was a co-lead with me was Afro-Latina, and she had leadership roles in both. So those experiences that she has as an Afro-Latina woman. I do think that Airbnb needs to have more senior Black leaders. I would love that. I'd love for us to have more executive presence on the E-team. But you know, I'm saying that because I'm at Airbnb, but that's for all tech companies. Like they could all do a better job at having more representation. And I'd love to see more, and I'm gonna say it like dark skin, 4C hair, braid wearing, you know, like that as well, you know, like, because I think there is that, as we mentioned earlier, that is that level of comfort with like, what's the most comfortable Black person that I can have around me. I'm starting to understand that and see that a lot in corporate America, which I didn't really experience in government. So I would like to see that. And I think that employees, and I think the public should be challenging that as well.
And I'm gonna combine the last two questions that Scarlett and Fredolyn, and if I'm saying your last name wrong, I am so sorry about that, because I'm such a stickler for Robotham, so I apologize. But they're both kind of in the same vein of like, what type of skills are necessary to get into the tech industry, and are the only jobs in the tech field hardcore tech?
Yeah, very good questions, Scarlett and Fredolyn. What type of skills are necessary to go into IT, and what other jobs in the tech fields are not hard tech skills? Yeah, so, you know, I have a job that is not a tech, you know, it's not a tech job, right? I'm an attorney. We are a platform team that supports the hard teams, the engineers and all the teams that are building and crafting the things, or the people who are making the policies. So some of the roles that I see, you know, whether it's going into legal, going into finance, on the policy team, those are some roles that come to mind for me. I'm sure there are others. Our employee experience team, so your human resource organizations, your diversity and inclusion teams, your, gosh, I feel like there are a ton of roles that you can go into that aren't hard science role. And I mean, I think even though I know in tech people over-index and higher in the hard skills, I think there's more softer skills than there are harder skills. Design, I don't know if design counts as a tech skill. Um, and I don't want to offend anyone that thinks that, like, I don't know, but like design is something that I think is very like creative. So I don't think of it as like you have to get an engineering degree to be a designer. So those are some of the roles that I see. And then the question around, where is it? Does Airbnb know what type of skills are necessary going into the IT industry? I think, things that are centered around engineering, math, computer science, technology, being able to navigate complex systems. I see a lot of people learning how to code. And then I hear some people that are saying like you can learn to code, but there are new evolutions that are coming. So keeping up with like what is the latest and greatest in the industry, I think Scarlett and Fredaline, I would advise like following some of the journals, whether it's TechCrunch or Axios, some of the news outlets that are up to date on what's happening in tech, because then that will help you understand, this is the direction, this is the wave that tech is going in, and here is how I can align myself for those hard skills, Scarlett, or for those softer skills that aren't hard tech, Fredaline.
And I'll say as somebody that works in the recruitment space as a yes and to what Julie is saying, most important to all of this is transferability of skills, right? And so I worked in education reform before coming to tech. I've been in tech almost 5 years at both Google and now Facebook. And it's always come down to like, how do your skills show up in this space? How will they help drive a bottom line? How will they contribute? How will you lead? And so I would encourage folks, like, especially as like you're beginning to look at job descriptions, like be able to voice, like, and create the narrative around like, how do your skills transfer to the space? Because that quite honestly is the entry point, right? It's like talking about how you will bring and add value to the organization, to the company, to the team that you're coming to. And so I want to thank everyone for their questions. They were awesome. And Julie also for staying over. My closing question in every setting now has become, what is advice that you would give to your younger self? And so as you look, let's say year-old Julie, so mid-20s Julie, as not to date you, what is advice that you would give to your younger self, yourself 10 years ago, maybe even?
Yeah, this is going to be a little off the beaten path. Start a YouTube channel. I would have, and not for YouTube purposes, but to document yourself and your growth. Document your journey. It doesn't have to be in YouTube. It can be in written form. I've come back home to Houston and spent a little bit of time with family. I found my journals from 1999. I was like, oh, that was you. But like, see who you were back way when, and how you've grown and how you've evolved, and what goals did you set for yourself back then. I think there's something beautiful about nostalgia and seeing yourself grow and transform and progress. So I don't have something that's like, make sure you read that book or do that thing. No, the biggest thing you can do is learn you and know you and document you and chronicle you. And that's what I would have told myself back then, chronicle this moment that you're standing in Nelson Mandela's office and you're seeing Secret Service men and women cry and weep in Madiba's office. Chronicle when Mrs. Obama congratulated you on passing the bar after you failed it when your dad died, because she too failed it and then passed, but her dad died too. Chronicle when you only had $7 a week for groceries. Like that's the advice I would give to my younger self. And if it's okay, Suzette, I just want to shout out one person, if that's okay. I'm in addition to shouting out Lisa Jones, I'm also wearing a designer from LA, and they have this series called Lost in Los Angeles, but this is Lost in Jesus Christ. And they are the Small Shop LA, and they're based in Los Angeles, California. The Stalwarts own the company, and it's just, it's a pillar for people in the Los Angeles community. And I just want to shout them out because they are a company rooted in Christ. So I just wanted to, that was my black business plug, in addition to Lisa as well, who's going to have us snatched for the gods.
I'm going to have that perfect contour. And I'm be representing the Lord now. So In addition, in addition to like documenting you, I want to say I'm grateful for you. This was phenomenal. I couldn't have imagined launching this with anyone else in any other moment, in any other space of time. So thank you for starting this journey with me, because you started a whole different journey with me. You didn't know you was going to start in December. And have absolutely become not only a friend, but a sister and a colleague in the tech space. So thank you for your humility and for modeling grace and courage, as well as Black, Beautiful, Brilliant. So we appreciate you. As well as Lisa. Thank you, Lisa. She is phenomenal. And I do mean, like, you inspired me in that moment. And so I couldn't have imagined not having her here today as well. This is monthly. And so for friends that know me, like, Suezette has thought about this as monthly, yes. And so excited to have you all join again, hopefully next month. And we'll actually be talking to Natasha Aaron. She's the head of multicultural marketing influencers. And so next month, we're going to talk about how you leverage and influence culture to do some brand building. So look forward to having her next month. Date and information is forthcoming. Again, Julie, you are light and you are life. Where can we find you, Suezette? I'm gonna type it because my name, it's Suezette at on Instagram, as well as if you type my name usually into Google and just my name and my last initial R, I come up on LinkedIn first as well. And then also if you follow Black Tech Beauty on Instagram, or you go to www.blacktechbeauty.com, which will take you to the homepage for Unapologetic Disruption, and also link you to the email address. So thank you for asking that as well. Julie, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for bringing me into this space.
Oh, good. Like, all right, now I gotta hang up and call Julie afterwards to talk some more about all these other things I learned about her. But thank you. You are light. You all are life, and we appreciate you.
Thank you so much. And thank you to everyone who's in attendance for the beautiful questions. Thank you, Suezette, for providing the space.
Thank you. Have a great evening, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.